Oh, does this work? Test, test. Don't think so. Oh.
Okay, it works. Okay, now Rob Guillermo will talk about how to build a site using Nick. Okay, thank you, Rob.
Hello, hello. Ah, it works. All right, so Steve should have been here talking about documentation, but unfortunately he couldn't be here, so you're stuck with me, unfortunately. But I have some slides about documentation, though, so I'll make a bit up for him. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit about Nick. First, I'll introduce myself. I'm Rob. I am a developer for Plone for, let's say, a bit over 15 years now, I guess. I did a lot of stuff, mostly front-end related stuff. So I did Volto, which you might have heard of, and some other stuff with TinyMC and Mosaic and all the fancy stuff. But I'm not going to talk about front-end today. More, I'm going to talk about back-end, which people probably didn't expect of me. Yeah, so what will we cover? For those of you who don't know what Nick is, I did a talk about it last year, but I will do a short introduction, having like a bit of the basics. And after that, I will go into detail about how you can actually make your own site using Nick. We'll go through all the stuff which you might be able to use in your site, so adding content types, but also all the stuff with permissions, workflows, vocabulary, search, events, everything you normally want to do when you want to customize your website and have a working website. Yeah, so what is Nick? Nick is a headless CMS. It's built with Node.js. Sorry, no Python. And it has a REST API, which is compatible with Plone, with the Plone REST API. So it basically implements about probably 99% of what the Plone REST API does. There's some minor differences, but not that many. So that also means it's compatible with Volto, so you can just use Volto either with the Plone REST API or with Guillotina, which has been around for a bit longer, or with Nick. So you can choose, well, pick your poison, basically. So why did I do that? Well, I'm of the fond believer that if you don't enjoy building stuff, then you shouldn't build it. So the first thing is it was fun to do, so that's why I just built it. Yeah, and Plone has a great architecture. I think we see a lot of other CMSs or other systems which, well, try to solve a problem which we've already solved like 20 years ago, and you see, they're struggling with this, we already did that. And to actually rebuild the whole thing means you learn a lot about the internals of Plone already, even though I'm already working with Plone for a long time. I learned a lot from the system still by actually rebuilding it. Yeah, and as I said, Plone has a great REST API, and that it's more or less a contract, so you can directly use Volto or any other front end on top of it, and it's more or less an in-place replacement. Yeah, so it started as a proof of concept on the Tokyo conference. I was there, I was traveling, and I was like, maybe should it be possible to just create something small and something easy to just have like a small backend as an example. So we could, back then I think Volto was still called Plone React, to have like a small example backend server so people could actually get started with Volto and not have to install the whole Plone stack. So I created like a small thing which just would be able to do fetching content and I think logging in, and there was no permissions or anything, but at least it did something. So you could actually just start it up and run it and don't need the whole stack to actually try out Volto at that time. Another big advantage is that, I mean, we have an awesome community, but it's hard to get people in sometimes. So big advantage of Nick is that both the front end and the back end are written in the same language. So that means you don't have to learn both JavaScript and Python to be able to make your site. So you can just use the same language. Yeah, so the issues with Plone, big disclaimer there, it's all in my opinion, so don't believe me, but you can discuss them obviously. But things I think are might be issues with Plone is there's a lot of legacy code. I think, as I said, we've been around for a really long time, and there's a lot of stuff which we don't use anymore. There's a lot of cleanup going on, obviously, but there's still a lot of stuff which is in there, which is probably not needed anymore, but it's hard to get rid of or to extract out into separate packages. A lot of code to maintain ourselves, especially the code we don't use. Deployment, at least for me, I'm not a deployment or whatever guy, so usually getting that stuff to run is always for me, I get these random errors and it doesn't work, so I think that's an issue, at least for me it is. For the rest, it's a pretty complex stack. I think probably you've seen if you have like a new colleague joining your team, and then you have to explain, okay, how do you do stuff? Well, then you go, okay, what techniques do we actually have? Okay, we have Python, we have Zope, we have generic setup to do stuff, we have CCML, we have page templates, we have a REST API, we have some YAML configs in there, we have some JSON files which you need configuration, we have config files even, some INI files, we have Markdown for some documentation, there's JavaScript depending on what front-end stuff you use, we have Webpack if you use Volto as well, we have CSS, SLS, and SAS, we have XSLT depending on if you use the theming story. We had build out, we don't have it anymore, at least most of the instances don't have KSS we had at some point. Well, it actually had some really nice stuff in there, but yeah. Anyway, portal skins, restricted Python, which we also don't have anymore, I think, and DTML, I'm not even sure if we use it still. Anyway, we have a lot of technologies, meaning there's a lot of stuff to learn, and luckily, a lot of that stuff which was on this list has already been removed, but there's still quite a lot to learn when you get into the community. So with Nick, I did it differently. So what did I do? JavaScript, JSON, and Markdown. That's the only thing I'm going to use, so no any other language or any other configuration language, just those three, and that's all you need to know. Storage is saved and progressed, using it because it's really nice, stable database. It's transactional, it has really nice JSON integration, and some nice text indexing as well, so you can actually use it with yesterday's search, as Ramon calls it, but it's normal search. Then I'm using Knex as a layer in between, and objection as just a layer on top of that. Files are just stored on disk in a blob storage, pretty similar to what Plone does. So Nick has a website if you want to have a look at it. It's not that much because there's no users yet, but hopefully after this talk maybe somebody's brave enough to try it out. But there's some information in there to try out how to get started. There's also a demo, so you can just, if you go to demo.nixcms.org, you can just go and log in, and it's basically the same as a standard Volto demo with a slightly different theme, but you can just edit stuff there and have a look. All the content gets reset every night, so you can mess around with it, or if somebody broke it, then hopefully the next day it works again. There's some documentation, as I promised, since Steve is not here. So the whole API is documented. As I said, it is almost the same API as the Plone REST API, so this should look pretty familiar to people already working with the REST API, but you can here check all the calls which are available. So to get content, to post content, workflow, logging, sharing types, everything which you would expect from a Plone REST API to be there is also available in Nick, so that shouldn't be new for people already working with the Plone REST API. And all the code is currently on my own account. Maybe we could move it to Plone at some point, we'll see. Yeah, so there's nothing much to show there. Yeah, so that's kind of the introduction. So if you want to start your own site, that's what the talk is going to be about. So how do you get started? First, you create a database, so you install Postgres. You just create a database with your project, add a user, and add some privileges to that user. Then you can generate your own project. So people familiar with Volto, it's more or less the same. So you have a package in Volto, you have a Volto package, and then you have a dependency in your own project, and it's the same with Nick. So basically, just there's a Nick package, and then you have a dependency on that one, and you already get a lot of files already there, which you can customize and add your own implementation to. So you basically install with the generator, and you say, okay, I want to install, create a new one, which is called my project in this case, and you get like the basic stuff. There's some commands to get you started. So there's a bootstrap command, which will fetch in all the packages needed. It will set up the initial database schema for you, including some initial data. And when that's done, you can just type in yarn start, and you get a working site, a working backend, I'd say. This will also generate a configuration file, which we'll have a look into more detail every step when we add stuff. But by default, it has some basic stuff in there. So well, obviously my connection strings to my database, where my blobs are stored, which port I'm running. Well, some image scales are in there, what my front-end URL is, and profiles, which I will get into what those are and how they work. When you want to run it with Volto, as I guess most people will do, you just have like a normal Volto setup, and you set your settings to use the backend on port 8000 instead of the 8080, which is default in Volto. And there's no rewrite stuff, so you just set it to the empty string, and then you should have a working site. Internationalization has always been a really strong point in Plone, so I needed to add that as well in Nick. I'm using the same structure, which is pretty familiar with both with Plone and with Volto, just using the getText method. So you have PO files and POT files, and they will be eventually rendered into JSON files, which are picked up by the backend. Command is also similar to Volto. Yarn18n will extract all the translatable strings in the code, so both in JS files and in JSON files, and will synchronize them between all the languages, and then you can translate them in the PO files and run it again to actually generate the JSON files which are used in the application. If you want to translate something in JavaScript, the only thing you have to do is call the i18n method. So in your request object, you have an i18n method, and you can translate stuff, also has arguments and all that stuff, but this is just a simple example. And this is enough. You don't. This is all you need to do. Just this will be picked up by the extractor, so the extractor messages, and this will also do the translation for you. So it's yeah, pretty clean. Regarding JSON, as I said, you can also do translations in JSON. So what you do there is in the ID you just do a colon i18n, and then the translate engine will pick it up, so you can actually, so that means that this will be extracted and will be translated, and also when this file is used, it'll strip the R18N tag from there, and it will just be the title, which is translated into your language in this case. And some other helper methods, just standard logging, which people should actually, well, just the default message if you want to do some debugging or logging in there. So that's the basic setup. So if you have everything going, then you should, and you run both your backend and your front end, you're going to have a website. So what I'm trying to show you now is how you can actually create all your content types, etc. And to do so, I'm just going to show like a small example of the items, and I will get to how you can implement all of these. So what we have here is we're going to build two content types. One is going to be a schedule, which is basically a folder, and in that folder there will be talks, which is also a content type. We have a view, as you can see here, which shows the talks which are there, which have a title and speaker. There's also total time, so that should calculate the total time of all the talks together. We have in the footer, we have the venue location, which is here, which should also come from somewhere. And if we continue to the, from the schedule, if I edit the schedule, then it's just the year which I have to enter, and the title and the ID should be generated automatically, so that should be schedule 2003, or depending on what year I fill in, obviously. If I go to the talk, then the talk will have a title, a description, an author with first and last name, biography, will have a length of the talk, so it'll either be a short or a long talk, the level or the audience, so beginner, intermediate or advanced, and the status, so whether or not this talk is already approved or rejected or just submitted. And we'll have an image of the author. Yeah, so that's, I guess, a lot of stuff which you would normally have in content types, or if you would build your own website of stuff you would actually use or need. So how are we going to go about implementing this in Nick? As I said, there are profiles, pretty similar as in Plone, meaning profiles contain a lot of configuration data, can be either content types or content itself, or users or groups or permissions or anything. So the whole idea is that you can have multiple profiles, as in Plone, as you have in Plone. By default, you have a Nick ships with two profiles, a core one and a default one. The core one is all the core functionality, which you will probably always need, and then the default one is some example content and some example users, and you usually probably don't need it in your own project, so you can use the core one from Nick and then use your own profile with your own content types and all the other settings in there. So it's basically a folder with some files. So in this case, it has some types in there, some groups, some permissions, etc. We'll get into detail about what all those files, what they do. But you can import them by running yarn seed, and it will go through all the profiles and apply them to the database, so all the data is in there. And there's a helper method for development to do reset, which basically resets the whole database and creates all the new structures and all the new content in there, yeah, which is, I find, pretty handy if I do local development on my machine. So first up, content types. That's probably the stuff we are using the most. So in this case, we have a profile with a types folder, and as I said, we have a schedule, a content type, and we have a talk content type. Now, what do they look like? So the basic one, schedule, is the simplest. It's a JSON schema. Same as the REST API returns, so you might be familiar with the structure here. So it has an ID, it has a title, it has some additional settings. So in this case, we say global allow, so it's you can add it anywhere you want. We do filter content types in the schedule. In this case, we only allow talks to be added to the schedule folder. We have a schema with the fields. The default one has the year field, as we just saw in the example, and then the property is just, in this case, an integer value of the year. And then we have something like behaviors, which is also pretty similar as in Plone or in Dexterity to be exact. And in this case, we just provide the folderish behavior, so we can actually add items into this content object. And the last line is the workflow. So in this case, we have a simple publication workflow, which is there by default from Nick Core, and you can obviously add your own workflows as well. If we're going to have a look at the talk one, this is like the simplest version of that, so it's more or less the same as the schedule one. In this case, we only added the title and the description here and here. We'll add the rest of it later. So this is only a text field, and description is a text area widget in this case. And then we have a required field, and for now we also have the same workflow, but we'll change that later on. Behaviors, same as you can do with Dexterity, so you can basically add behaviors to your content types, and there's two flavors of them. One is schema-based, so in this case, we had our talk content type, which only had a title and description. If we want to add author data to it, we can just add a behavior, because maybe we need the author for other content types as well. So we create an author behavior with a JSON schema. So what does it have? It has a first name, a last name, bio, and a picture. So same JSON schema, first name, last name, both strings, bio is a text area. And then we have a picture, which is in this case is a file widget with an image as a factory. So we can add images in there, so the scales and all that stuff will be automatically generated for that field. Something which you can also do in Nick, which I don't think you can do in Dexterity, is nested behaviors. So you can actually create a behavior and then have another behavior have fields themselves, or just have behaviors in the behavior. So you can make, like, I don't know what you want with it, but it might be nice to have if you can nest those and have more complex structures than that, if you have a lot of different content types or lots of different fields. But for now, in this example, we're not going to use it. As I said, there's two types of behaviors. One is the schema-based, so the JSON-based, and the other one is behaviors, well, basically based on source code. So in this case, there's a behavior which we call ID title from year, which basically should generate the ID and the title based on the year we entered in our content type. So how are we going to set that up? So basically, we have the behaviors folder. And we added the ID title from year field. I have to explain a bit more about some of the internals from Nick. So Nick uses, as I said, it uses objection as a ORM, which means that each content type will inherit from a document model in this case. So every content item has a document model base class, and that document model has lots of methods which are there by default, obviously, like stuff to get the URL, to set the ID, to get the title, check if it's folderish. Well, all sorts of methods are in there, and all these methods can be overridden in a behavior. So, for instance, we have the method, where is it, get title, for example, or set title, or set ID. Those are methods which we don't want to have like they are now, because we don't have ID and title fields for the schedule one, but we want to add our own, so we want to override them, basically. So what do? We created a behavior called ID title from year. We create an object, and we add some methods in there, and these will override the standard behavior of that content model. So in this case, we're going to say the set ID method we're going to override, and we're not adding the ID field in there, but we just say, okay, the ID should be schedule, and then the dash, and then added the year. And this unique ID helper method will make sure that it's not already taken, and if it is, then it will add a -1 or -2 or whatever to it, same as we have in Plone. Then the get title is pretty similar. So if you do get title, it will just return schedule and then the year. So it will just be schedule 2023 in this case, if you entered 2023 as a year. So this is the behavior. Then you just need to add some glue. So meaning there's the index.js file, which you have to import and export. So if you have multiple behaviors, you can add them all here. So you can import them from one location. And then these behaviors you can add to your configuration file. So you import the behaviors here, and then all the way in the bottom you add them to your configuration, and then the behaviors are available to use in your content type. Yeah, let's continue with initial content. So basically, we had our content types defined. So we had our schedule and we had our talk. But we want to have like an example website with some data already in there. I'm using more or less the same format as kitconcept.contentcreator, which is a add-on package for Plone, which will let you easily add content in there. So you basically have in your profile, you have a folder called documents, and it has dotted names for all the items which will be added. So in this case, we have schedule.json, which is this folder with the schedule, and then we have two talks, which is schedule.nic.json and schedule.documentation.json, which contain the two talk data from it. And then we have an images folder where the images of both speakers are stored. Looking at the schedule JSON file, you can specify UID if you want to, but you don't have to. You specify type, and you fill in all the fields. In this case, it's just one, it's just the year. And then you can say who the owner of that document is and what the current workflow is. If you don't specify this, it will be the initial state. Then looking at the schedule, at the talk content type, we also have type talk. It's a title and descriptions filled in here with a first and a last name, which come from the behavior. We have the picture, which is just an absolute path in your profile. So in this case, I had an images folder with my image in there, and this will add it to will store it in the blob storage basically. And then we have some fields which are not in the schema yet, but I will show they will be added later, which are length and level. And then we also have the owner, which is another user, in this case, not the admin. And then we have a workflow state of the specific talk. Some other stuff you can do in the initial content is also add versioning if you want to. So the system supports versioning, but you can also add it as initial content. I'm not sure if people would use it, but you can. In this case, if you wanted to have like an item in there with already, maybe if you do like a conversion from a Plone site or from anywhere else and you want to add your whole revision history in there, you can just basically specify all the versions in there with all the fields which can be in that version with all the change note and all the changes in there. Another thing you can do are to import redirects or to add redirects. So in this case, we want the /talks-2023 to redirect to /schedule2023. So this is the UID of the schedule, and you can add multiple redirects here. So yeah, the pages or the user will be redirected from one URL to a specific document. All right, permission system. Yeah, as we all know, Plone has, I think personally, the best permission system of all CMSs. But it's also like really, really complex, meaning it's really flexible and you can do a lot with it. So what does Plone actually have, or what does Nick also have? So permissions, we have roles, roles have permissions. We have groups, and groups can have one or more roles. We have users, and users can have roles, and users can have groups, or can be part of groups. That's all global, right? Then we have local roles, meaning a user and a group will have, or user and or a group can have a specific role on a specific part on that website. Those permissions can be either inherited or not. So do you want to start over, or do you want to say, okay, from here on the website, I have the same permission as I'm specifying there. Yep, as I said there. And then we have workflows as well. So objects, yep, will have, can have different states and also have permissions and transitions in there. We have states who have permissions, and yeah, so there's a lot of things going on, right? So how does it all work? So we have permissions, which we can define. By default, these are already there, so if you add, login, logout, etc. And if we want to add new ones, in this case, if we want to have permission to submit a talk or to approve a talk, we will just add permissions in this case with translatable strings. We will have roles. So we have, by default, we have anonymous authenticated owner, reviewer, administrator. Those are already there by default. You can obviously remove or add or whatever with them. And you can add in your own projects, you can add new roles. So add a speaker or a program manager in this case, and I give them the permission in the submit talk for the speaker and approve talk for the program manager. I can add some initial users, so I add myself as a speaker, and there's an admin user, which is also a program manager in this case. Groups, same, so this in case we have a speakers group, which have the role speaker. Workflows are also pretty similar to Plone, so you have states and you have transitions. So in this case, we have states, we have submitted, approved, and rejected, and they have labels, they have a description. You can have transitions for each state to either approve or reject in this case. We have permissions associated with the specific workflow state, and we have the transitions which have a title, the destination state, and they have a permission, so if you are allowed to do that depending on your permission there. So if we add all that stuff to the talk, then we basically change the workflow in the talk JSON to talk workflow instead of the default simple publication workflow. Sharing local roles, as it's also known, you can also add it to the initial content, so you can actually add sharing and then say, okay, these users have these roles in this location. So you can add that to your initial content, basically. I don't have super much time left, so I'll go to it a bit quicker than the other ones. Vocabularies, also multiple ways of doing vocabularies. One is using code. So in this case, we want to have like a vocabulary which all the talk levels. So we can do that on disk. So we create a method called talk levels in this case, and we have a helper method object to vocabulary, which will take a JavaScript object and will convert it to a vocabulary. In this case, beginner, intermediate, advanced, those are the levels. And if I add it to the index.js and to the configuration file again, I can use it later in my content type. I will show you in a second. We could also add vocabularies using JSON. So we have a talk length vocabulary.json in this case, which is just a JSON structure with ID and a title, and we have the items in here with the tokens and the title, translatable, obviously. And if we add those, then and here we have added the length and the level fields, and we specify the title, and then we specify which vocabulary is used in this case, and it will be automatically picked up in the UI. Search and catalog. So currently Nick uses just Postgres as a search engine. Postgres has pretty good text indexing, and I added some like a catalog, more or less as the same as Zope has on top of it. So we have indexes and we have metadata. Indexes can be used to search, obviously, and metadata are the fields which are returned. So by default, there's already a lot of stuff in there which you can search, and if you want to add specific items to your catalog, you can do so. So in this case, we're going to add a author index, which is just like first name, last name combined. And we'll be adding a total time index, which will calculate of all the child objects of the talks. It will add it to the schedule content type. The indexes we will add by using behaviors as well. So we have behaviors for the author index, and we have a behavior for the total time index. The author index, as I said, is just a simple method which just adds the first name and the last name together. So we just have one string of the author. The total time index is a bit more complex, but not so complex. So what it does is it will fetch all the children. It will loop over all the children. It will check if the talk is short or long. If it's short, it will add 32 minutes to it. If it's a long talk, then it will add 45 minutes, and it will return the value, which is indexed in the catalog in this case. This should also be exported in the index file. And then when we have the schedule.json content type definition, what we do is we add that behavior. So we already had the folderish and the ID title from year behavior, and now we added the total time index behavior to it, and now the behavior is added to the schedule content type. Same for the talk content type, we will add the author index in there. Events. As you might have already noticed, total time obviously needs to change when you add a talk or edit a talk, right? But normally when you edit a content item, the parent doesn't get indexed. So that's what we're going to try to fix. So events, pretty similar to Plone as well. There's a lot of events which you can use. So on before add, on after add, on before copy, etc. So these are all events which will happen to a content item and you can hook into to do something, basically. So what does an event look like? Just a method. You will get passed in a context and a transaction of your database transaction, and you get some parameters depending on what event you have. So in this case, we're going to do a re-index of the parent. So basically, if we add or change a talk, we're going to re-index our schedule content type. So what does it look like? We have a method called re-index parent unmodified. We have an on after modified and on after add, which is basically the same method. We're going to check if our current content type is a talk. If it's not, then it will return. If it is a talk, then we're going to check if the parent is already fetched. If it's not, then we'll fetch our parent. And we're going to use the re-index method of the parent, and it will re-index all the indexes of the parent. We'll hook it up to index.js so we can easily import it and also add it to the configuration. And then this event will be automatically triggered. Last part is control panels. So there's already a lot of control panels available by default. So mail settings and all navigation, everything you would expect there already to be. And you can also create new ones. In this case, we saw in the example in the footer, we had like the location of the venue in this case. So we'll add a venue control panel, which will have a schema with the name, address, and websites in this case. Just a normal JSON schema, same as content types have. So where you can fill in the data, and you can also specify the initial data of your control panel right in there. So you have the name, the address, and the website in this case, but you can obviously leave it empty or have other people change or fill it in. And if you want to get those settings, there's some helper methods there to fetch the control panel, and then you have the config object, which will contain the name, the address, and the website, or any other of the fields which you defined in your control panel. When we have a look at the navigation panel, control panel, which is there by default, it looks like this. So it has a lot of settings of what items should be there to display, and it has displayed item by default. It's just folder and page. If I want to override it in my own project, I will just create a navigation.json control panel, specify the ID, and just only change the values which I want to change. So in this case, I want to change the display types, and I add my schedule to it, so my schedule will also show up in the navigation. Yeah, some things about testing. So by default, it has some testing framework in there, and it can test mostly the requests. So what you can do is specify a request and a response, and you can test those. There's some helper methods for that. So the schedule.request is a URL which will fetch the schedule endpoint with some authorization header, and then the result is your expected result. So you should be expecting a 200, okay, and with all these fields. And to test this, there's a helper method called test request, and you just need to specify the path of the schedule, and it will just fetch it will run this test, do the request, and check it with the result, and if it matches, then everything is fine, as you can see here. So basically you do yarn test, and it says, well, I'm testing the types endpoint, and it's done, and it's passed. So that's apparently we did something right. As promised, we have some documentation slides. You already maybe saw that there was already a documentation folder where the examples are, and the examples used for testing are also immediately included in the documentation. So there's an index.md file with like an introduction, and you can have your types markdown file, where you can include the request and the result in there. And these are in your documentation, and these are the exact same files which are used in your tests, so you always would know that your documentation is up to date with those files. You can generate those documentation on GitHub pages, and you will get something like this for your own project. Looks pretty similar as the Nick documentation as well. I think one minute over time, but yeah, that's about it about Nick. Short introduction of how you can build your own site. My slides are over there. There's also all the code I just showed is in an example repository, so if you want to play around with it, you can. And if you're brave enough to try it out in either production or some other project, let me know. I'm happy to help. Yep. Thank you very much.
Any question?
No questions. Oh, one I see there.
First of all, very cool.
Thank you.
Second, where's the catch? Like, what can't it do what Plone can do?
So content rules is not implemented currently. Sorry? Portlets, yes, but that's intentional. No, there's nothing else, I guess. I mean, there's probably some like minor details in there, but yeah, like all the basic stuff, as I said, is in there. Yeah, but it's all, as you saw, it's slightly different than Plone, and it's a different language, and which might not or might suit you. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Oh, all the way over there.
Hi, so it's late if I understand, so I'll stick to the quick and easy ones.
Yep.
Do you have any benchmarks? Did you try or plan to do any benchmarks and comparisons with Plone?
Yes, so I would love to do that. I talked to David about it, and he had some benchmark stuff already on Plone, and we're trying to set it up to do both. I mean, when I'm developing it locally, it feels fast, but I don't know. I don't have like any real numbers, but yeah, you should definitely. I'm really looking into that as well. Yeah.
And do you have anything in production already with it?
Yes, my own pet project. Yeah.
And the last and most important one, when TypeScript?
I think like the Python Node.js is already battle enough, so maybe we should extend this one to a later point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.